Hello all. Welcome to Sakshi TV's special talk show with attorney Ms. Saimithra Reddy. I'm Preeti Mulbagal, your host for the show. Saimithra Reddy, the managing attorney and founder of Mithra law firm based in the Chicago area. She studied at Northeastern University of School of Law in Boston and has extensive experience working with immigrants from all around the world and with the Indian population, specifically on issues affecting F1 students and professionals such as H-1B visa holders. She also represents individuals who are detained by ICE and in immigration court hearings before immigration judges. Ms. Saimithra Reddy, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our today's topic is about the ICE and what documents are required for the visa holders. What is the legal difference between an encounter with the US Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and US Customs and Border Protection, and why does it actually matter to the visa holders?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when we're talking about these two different entities, ICE and CBP, it's mainly regarding whether you are already in the United States or you are trying to enter into the United States. You're at one of the port of entries, so most commonly airports or land borders. So, when you are trying to enter into the country, that's when Customs and Border Patrol officers, the CBP officers, really have
Mhm.
authority, and they have broad authority, we'll talk about this later, to determine whether they should allow you into the country, whether they want to revoke your visa and send you back, whether they want to question you further and ask to see a variety of different documents. If you are
Mhm.
already living in the United States, then the ICE officers can stop you, they can come to your place of work, they can ask to see your documents to determine whether you are legally present in the United States. So that is the key difference between both entities.
So, in what situations does ICE and CBP actually have the authority to stop, question, or detain a visa holder in the United States?
Both entities actually do have a very broad authority. I will say CBP officers who are at the border, airports, for example, they have very broad authority because they are in charge of who gets to enter the United States, who's allowed to come in and who's not. So they are seen as police officers who are protecting the safety of the United States. So they have very broad authority to look at all of your paperwork, to search your devices, your phone, your laptop, and determine whether you are going to be someone who is safe to allow in or you might be a threat to the United States. In terms of the authority that ICE agents have, it's a little less. They cannot just search your phone or your laptop without a proper warrant. They have more requirements, I could say, right? Before they're able to question you and stop you. They're not police. They cannot just stop you on the road and pull you over like the police can. So there's more limitations and restrictions on ICE and broader authority for CBP officers.
So, being informative is so important. Whatever information has been, you have informed us right now, that is very important for all the visa holders. Being
Yes,
informative helps a
absolutely.
lot. Yeah, because we
Yes.
do not know the scope of what they are supposed to and they are not supposed to do. So, which really affects the visa holders.
Exactly. Yes. If you don't know what your rights are, then how can you ask for your rights and assert your rights? Yeah.
Very true. So, what documents should the visa holders always carry, and what documents are better stored digitally or at home?
That's a really important question, especially in current times. More and more officers are requesting to see a wide variety of documents. Even ICE agents within the country are asking to see visa holders' documents. Generally, it does depend on what visa you have. However, for all visa holders, I think it's best practice to carry a soft copy of your current passport that's unexpired, your current visa, and your I-94. It's a very important document. The I-94 needs to be valid and show that you are legally present. Those three things are really important. And in addition, if you are employed, for example, then an employment offer letter or verification letter to show that you are legally employed and working somewhere. If you are currently a student, maybe a valid I-20 showing that you are enrolled in so-and-so university and you're attending classes there. So anything to show that you have valid status and you are complying with your legal status. And all of these should be soft copies. I don't recommend carrying the hard copies because you can lose them. If you have a green card, permanent residency, you can carry the green card as well, or at least a soft copy of the green card.
So soft copies are accepted. It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory. I have heard of some situations in which officers are asking where's the hard copy, but I believe it is quite unreasonable to be carrying all the hard copies everywhere you go. So soft copies, absolutely necessary. You can keep them in your phone and explain that I have the hard copy at home. Officer, I can produce it if needed. And that has been widely accepted.
Okay, that's awesome. So, are there any precautions the visa holders should take before traveling domestically or internationally, especially if their status is in pending or has recently changed?
Yes, this is a question I get a lot from my clients. Domestically, it is definitely safer to travel. However, if your visa has been revoked or you have overstayed your visa or you are in a kind of limbo status, you have applied to change your status, but it has not been approved yet. There are certain precautions you should take. You should reach out to an immigration attorney to explain your specific situation. I would avoid even domestic travel and going to airports if you are in those situations, in that your visa situation is not clear, your visa has been revoked, or if you are an F1 student, your service has been terminated. There have been instances where ICE agents are present at airports and they're pulling people aside and asking further questions. For international travel, that is a different thing. And I would say if you have any issues with your visa, if you think you have overstayed or you have any unlawful presence, then absolutely consult with an immigration attorney, because once you leave, you will likely be denied re-entry if you do not have proper visa documents or you have overstayed your allowed period of time here.
And how should visa holders prepare if they live in a shared housing or with US citizens or green card holders?
In the context of if you are maybe married to a US citizen or you are related to a US citizen or green card holder, I would say if you have any application on file with USCIS, then you should carry a soft copy at least of the receipt notice. For example, if you yourself are a visa holder and you are married to a US citizen and you have filed an application for you to become a permanent resident, then have some sort of proof with you that you have an application pending, so that if you are pulled over or you're stopped by any kind of officer, then you can show that as proof. Otherwise, if you don't have any applications pending, if you don't have any legal relationship between the US citizen or the permanent resident, and you're just living in a shared space, unfortunately, that does not offer you any protection. You still need to be prepared as any other visa holder would be.
So, what are the key rights of visa holders that they should remember if stopped by ICE or CBP? So, I know we've gone through this in a very superficial manner. So, if you could explain in a little bit more detailed way.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, as I said, knowing your rights is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of your visa status, whether you have legal status, you're undocumented here, every immigrant has key basic rights. One of those is the right to remain silent. You do not actually have to answer any questions that the officer asks you. You can assert your right to an immigration attorney to be present. What the consequences are later might be different depending on whether you are trying to enter the United States or you are already here. For example, if you are at the airport trying to enter the United States, you do not have to answer questions. You can remain silent. You can ask for an attorney. However, they can continue the questioning, and if they're not satisfied, they can deny you re-entry and say that you have to return to your home country. However, if you are already in the United States, then you have a stronger right to assert for asking for an immigration attorney to be present. They will cease the questioning. When it comes to searches of your devices or laptops, you don't have to consent, However, again, if you are at the border, they can take that as a sign of you're trying to hide something. Maybe you pose a security risk to the US, so they can deny you reentry. However, if you are in the country already, then if an officer asks to see your phone or your laptop or search it, they actually need to have a warrant. So know that you do not need to give ICE your phone or your laptop and allow them to freely open up and access your documents. You do not need to give them your passwords. You do not need to log into any of your accounts. You can say, I assert my right to remain silent and I want an attorney present.
When it comes to answering the questions, are there any specific questions that the visa holder must answer, and which questions can they not? Can they legally decline?
So I wouldn't say there are specific questions and maybe not specific questions. Just generally, you don't have to answer anything that you think would get you into trouble. And I tell all of my clients, if you are apprehended by ICE or you're stopped by any immigration officer, there are certain questions that you can comfortably answer. What is your legal status? What visa are you here on? Are you employed? Who do you work for? Right? So those are basic questions that everyone should be able to answer. And if you can't even answer that, then that would raise some major suspicions. If they ask you, what is your current status? And you say, I don't know, then that would be concerning, right? So if you're
Right.
employed, if you attend school, if you are doing your master's degree at so-and-so university, you can give them basic information like that. What is your name? Where do you live? Right? Up until that line of questioning is fine. If they then ask you more detailed questions as to how long have you lived here, or what is your reason for living here, those kinds of suspicious questions, you can choose not to answer those, and you can say, I would really feel comfortable with an attorney. I would like to call an immigration attorney. I prefer not to answer
Okay.
these questions. Yes.
And you mentioned that the ICE agents do not have the rights to any searches or any, to the searches. But is it advisable that we provide any consent for the search of phones or laptops or personal belongings?
Yeah, I would say with CBP officers at the border, yes, you should give consent. There are certain precautions you can take, right? If you know that you are planning any international travel and there is something that you don't want the agent to see, or it's not necessary, you can maybe log out of your social media accounts, or to that extent, you can be a little prepared. But with CBP officers, you do have to consent. Even if you don't consent, they can actually look through your devices on a basic level. With ICE agents, I would advise people to not openly give consent. There's really no reason for ICE agents to search your devices, and they cannot just search your devices without first getting a warrant from a judge. So it has to be a signed warrant from a judge, and they have to explain what reason, on what basis do they want to search your devices. Without that, you do not need to give your device, and they don't have any right to take your device. So I think it's unnecessary to give ICE your phone or your laptop.
Okay, so they can remind them of their rights that, or ask for the warrant
Exactly.
instead.
They should ask for the warrant and ask the officer, where's your warrant, sir or ma'am? And may I know for what reason you are asking to search my devices?
So, what should a visa holder do if the officers ask them to sign any documents on the spot?
Absolutely not do that. Don't sign anything that you don't understand, you don't fully consent to. Generally, officers do explain what these documents are. There are very probably rare scenarios in which they just give you a blank sheet of paper or some document and just say, sign this. They will say, this is a notice to appear in immigration court, or this is so-and-so document. It is in English, and so if you are not fully comfortable reading and understanding English, you can ask for a translation, you can ask for a translator. So you always do have the right to ask for a translation provided in the language that you are most comfortable in. You do not ever need to sign any documents that are in a language that you don't understand, that haven't been explained to you properly. They have to ask you, do you consent to this? Do you understand this? Do you wish to speak with anyone before signing this? If you do understand what's being presented to you, if you waive the right to speak with an attorney, all of those things, then okay, go ahead and sign it. But I would generally say do not sign anything without fully being aware of what you're signing.
So, how should someone handle an encounter if their visa is valid? but their employer address or employer has changed, or any
Yeah.
role has recently been changed?
That's a really great question. So I think there's two different types of encounters, right? One in which the person is maybe not in lawful status or their visa has expired. In that
Mm-hmm.
scenario, it's understandable that the immigrant would be nervous and scared
Mm-hmm.
and not know what to say. If you have valid legal status, you are properly employed, you are following all the rules and regulations of your visa status or your visa, there's no reason to be nervous. I think the first thing I would say is that yes, it might seem intimidating that an officer, an immigration officer, is wanting to talk to you, but they really mostly just want information. They want to just know, who are you? Are you here legally? If not, what is your status, right? If you can just
Mm-hmm.
explain to them, this is my legal status, this is my visa, mostly the questioning will stop there. They don't have time to do an in-depth interrogation of every single
Mm-hmm.
person. So once they ask 3, 4 questions and they're satisfied and they are able to see a copy of your valid unexpired I-94, your visa, they'll verify and say you're good to go. I've seen several cases like that. If they
Mm-hmm.
start questioning more about, where do you work? Okay, what is your address? You said your office is in Dallas, Texas, but you live in New Jersey. Can you explain that? I think be
Mm-hmm.
honest. It's very important
Okay.
to be honest and try to explain to the best of your ability. Sir, this is a remote position. My offer letter says that this is a remote position. I don't have to go in person to the office, or I only have to go once every other month, and I take a flight from New Jersey to go to Dallas, and I go to the office. My office address is this, right? So just explain the situation.
Mm-hmm.
If the officer is satisfied with your explanation, it makes logical sense, then they won't continue asking questions. So remember just to not be nervous, explain to the best of your ability what it is that
Mm-hmm.
the circumstances. If the questioning gets too long or you're not able to explain or there are some complexities in your situation, then assert the right to have an immigration attorney.
So, what additional scrutiny should the visa holders expect at airports or land borders?
So I will say in this administration, there have been a lot of policy changes. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
enforcement priorities have changed. So if you
Mm-hmm.
are coming into the country and you're at an airport or land border, you can fully expect an immigration officer, a CBP officer, to ask you questions about who you are, where you live, what you do for work. Are you attending school? Right. So basic questions like that. If they're not satisfied with your answers or you have any sort of complex immigration history, then there are additional cases of people being taken into secondary inspection, which is just a private room where officers will
Mm-hmm.
talk to you one-on-one. In that
Mm-hmm.
room, they might ask to see your documents. They might make some phone calls. If you say, my employer is so-and-so, they might ask for your employer's phone number and call
Mm-hmm.
them in front of you and verify, I have so and so sitting in front of me. Does this person work for you? So you can expect
Mm-hmm.
verification calls, you can expect a verification of your documents, and then a search of your devices as well. Social media presence is being heavily scrutinized now in this administration. Officers are looking at any social media you have, LinkedIn pages.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for mainly, are you a threat to the United States? Do you have any political posts? Do you have anything that could be considered anti-American? Right. So they
Okay.
will go through all of that and see whether you have any social media presence that might be considered harmful.
So, when does this actually happen? Going through the social media presence. So, when they are like out of the airport, or when they are at the immigration after entering into the country, or when does this actually happen?
Yeah, so all of this would happen as soon as you get off the flight and then you walk into the airport after you've taken an international flight. The first
Mm-hmm.
port of entry, the first,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, if you have connecting domestic flights in the United States, that's irrelevant. However, your first port of entry in the United States, you go to the customs and officers for the
Mm-hmm.
inspection, right? When they check your
Mm-hmm.
passport,
Mm-hmm.
they ask you who you are, all of that. So at that
Mm-hmm.
point, the officer would check your passport and ask you the basic questions. If they're not satisfied, they would immediately say, sir, ma'am, please head over to the right side. You will be placed into secondary inspection, and you will not be allowed to go to baggage claim and leave the airport. You would be redirected essentially to
Okay.
another private area, which is secondary inspection.
So during the secondary inspection, the visitors are expected to remain calm and provide consent to any searches or anything, or do they have the right to deny or decline?
So again, you have the right to remain silent and request an immigration attorney. However, like I mentioned before, CBP authority is quite broad. Now, it's not that you don't have the right to deny or decline consent. You can say, no, officer, I do not want you to search my phone or my laptop. However, that denial could be used against you, and they could say, well, because we're not able to search your phone or your laptop and you're not giving us consent, we cannot allow you to enter the country at this time. And they can turn you
Okay.
back. So they
Okay.
have the full authority to assess whether or not someone should be allowed into the country or not. So while you can say that you don't consent, it could be used against you. That's something you should know. However, if you are pulled into secondary inspection, please remain calm. It does not mean that you are going to be deported or sent back. A lot of people go into secondary inspection and they're asked additional questions and they're allowed into the country. It's no problem. They just need additional information. They need to verify more things.
Yeah. So that
Mhm.
is what usually gets them to a panic state.
Yes,
Usually.
yeah. Yeah, right, right. And that's why I'm saying it's very important to remain calm, because if you do panic and get nervous, you can involuntarily give a lot of unnecessary information or say incorrect things because you're just nervous and you start
which
talking and
can
saying
be
too much
which can
information.
be
Yeah,
used against them later on.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So, what extra precautions apply to students, H-1B holders, dependent visa holders, or those on OPT or CPT?
Yeah, I think one is making sure that you carry all the required documents at all times, have a soft copy with you, have access to it, download it. Don't just have it on your in your email, because if you are stopped by an officer, the last thing you want to be doing is searching through your emails and trying to download things when the internet is unstable. You're going to become more nervous, right? So if you can print out copies of things, take scanned copies and just keep them in your car, that's great too. If you can just download everything and have it very accessible in your phone, that would be good. So having copies of your documents to show that you are in valid legal status is a very, very big precaution that you can take. Another precaution is just simply knowing your rights and understanding what is happening, right? So if an ICE officer stops you for some reason, don't panic and think that you're going to be taken to a detention center or be deported. That's absolutely not the case. There are so many reasons why an ICE officer can stop you. They might just randomly be doing checks and just wanting to know whether you are legally here or what is your status. I have been hearing some reports of ICE officers stopping people in national parks and any kind of areas near the border. So even after you have crossed the border, for example, some near the border areas in Texas, if you are driving very close to the Mexico border, then ICE agents have stopped people and asked, okay, what are you doing here? Can I see your paperwork? Are you legal? What is your status, right? So knowing and understanding that an encounter with ICE doesn't necessarily mean that you're being deported. So you don't panic and you can calmly think and answer the questions.
How should the visa holders handle encounters if they have any prior visa denials, overstays, or status gaps?
Yeah, that is a really good question. If you have complex immigration histories, meaning prior denials, or you have overstays, I think it would be best to assert your right to have an attorney right away. You can try to just explain to some extent that, yes, my visa was revoked. Last year, early last year, we saw a lot of F1 students' visas getting revoked if they had any kind of arrest history and they were fingerprinted for civil violations, criminal violations, anything. However, a lot of the students are still in valid status because their service is valid and they are able to continue working, they have valid work authorization, but their visas remain revoked. So if a student feels comfortable enough to explain that, yes, officer, my visa was revoked. However, my I-94 is valid, my service is valid, I am currently working, here is a copy of my work authorization card, right? If they can explain that, fine. But if you're not able to explain that and you're getting very nervous, just simply say, I would like to have an attorney present And the officer should be able to give you some time to call an attorney and get an attorney on the line.
So, what advice would you give to the visa holders attending protests, large public events, or political gatherings?
Yeah. Unfortunately, this administration is taking political participation as a sign of being anti-American. Historically, that has never happened. In the United States, especially, the freedom of speech is a very big right that everyone has, regardless of immigration status. However,
Mhm.
in reality, I am seeing in the news and certain cases where immigrants and visa holders who are attending protests and
Mhm.
voicing out their dissatisfaction with either the government or various issues happening in the world, they are being arrested by ICE. They're being targeted. I would say try to keep your political involvement at a minimum, or at least maybe avoid attending very large gatherings and protests where there are immigration officers and police present if you are an immigrant or visa holder. I know that is not a great thing to say, but that is the reality. And to safeguard yourself and make sure that you are able to continue living here and you don't have any consequences to your immigration status, that is the reality
Mhm.
right now, that you might have to be careful.
So, what steps should the family members or employers take if the visa holder's visa is detained, if the visa holder has been detained?
Okay, so if a person is detained, um, I would say mostly I work with a lot of detained clients, and a lot of families contact me once their family member has been detained by ICE. It
Mhm.
is a very stressful situation because
Mhm.
ICE
Mhm.
officers detain someone and they don't inform the family members, they don't properly give information about which detention facility the person is being taken to. There is a way to find out online and look up where this person is being detained. So if you don't have the proper information about where the person has been taken, then you can go online and look up ICE detainee search, right? You can just Google that. You will need the person's full name, date of birth, and alien number, A number, which is usually a 9-digit number. If you have those three things, then you can find which detention center the person is located at. You should reach out to an immigration attorney so that they can facilitate speaking with the person who has been detained, and they can arrange for requesting the judge or the immigration officer release of the person on parole or bond. So you can request the judge. It's similar to releasing someone on bail. So you can request the judge to release them. I would say if a person has been detained, reach out to an immigration attorney, because it's not something that you can just go to the detention center and ask for the person to be released. There are certain legal processes that need to be followed.
Okay, okay. So we're almost at the end of our show, Ms. Saimithra. So before we close, so do you recommend visa holders carry a Know Your Rights card or any emergency contact information?
I would say that's a great idea, especially if your English is not particularly strong and you are nervous to communicate with the officer. Having some sort of know your rights card, you can just present to the officer, and that way you are asserting your rights. Otherwise, having emergency contacts, right? If you are unable to speak or you're just nervous and scared, you can say, please call this person, or this is my immigration attorney, please call this person, or I would like to speak with this person. If you're detained, right, they take away your phone, so you
Mhm.
are only able to use the phones in the detention center.
Okay,
Nowadays, no one memorizes phone numbers. So if you have that kind of
sure.
card or that information on hand, then you can use that
Mhm.
to make a phone call if needed.
So it's a good idea. All right, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mithra, for your time today and for the amazing insights you have provided the viewers on the very hot topic about ICE and CBP. Thank you so much for your time.